What's going on, fishy friends? And welcome to the Fishing Corner Catch and Release Special, sponsored by Old School Tackle Company. I'm your host, Grant Elliott, and man, do we have a great show for you guys tonight. We do have a surprise guest, and we have a rare opportunity to represent really everyone at the table tonight. We will have two rec guys, me being one, and the second one being Sam Azoulay. We will have two charter captains. Let's go ahead and bring people in as we talk. Hey, Sam.
Hey, how are you?
Two charter captains and Chuck Jones.
Hey, guys.
Walleye Pete. Chuck.
Hello.
Walleye Pete, how you guys doing?
Good.
I'm hanging in there.
Last but not least, the surprise guest, David Sorsky. What's going on, man? David, can you hear us?
I don't have a title or
Oh, you're muted,
definition.
David. Oh, you're good now. You're good now.
Yeah, I got you.
Dave, do us a favor if you can and turn your camera sideways so you're as big as all the rest of us. We don't want to
make you small.
Diminutive.
Did that
There
work?
you go. There you go. Well,
I'm looking for my darn. I'm on my phone. I'm here walking through the hallways of my house, and I'm looking for my tripod.
Oh well.
So
it's okay. We
sorry,
can
I digress.
see you. And David, you were on like super short notice. I reached out to you literally 30 minutes ago. I'm sitting here thinking, getting ready for the show. We're gonna have two captains, two rec guys. It'd be awesome if we could represent everyone at the table.
This is gonna be part cooking show.
100% fine. Well, while Sikorsky's getting unfrozen, Sam, I want to talk to you first. You're a rec guy,
Right.
Originally from New York, correct?
Correct.
And you and I went fishing last week, and we had quite the day. I'm only here to kind of set you guys up, like volleyball, set and spike.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and spike it for us and walk us through that day.
That day was pretty incredible. We went out on my boat out of Gill, and the thing this time of year really is to look for birds, and that's what we did. And it doesn't have to be many birds; it could be just a little bit of birds. And luckily, most of the places that we were at, we were not crowded with a lot of boats. We did see Chuck a couple times. We went to different places: Western Shore, Eastern Shore. And hooked up on some beautiful fish, very healthy fish, and a lot of fish. Also, it was important that all of us worked great as a team on the boat, safety-wise, which Pete taught me a lot of that. By the way, I owe a lot of my experience to Pete, by the way, and
Thank
learning.
you, Sam. I love you too, man.
No, it's the truth, man. You taught me everything. There's no doubt about that. And that's how important guides are, to tell you the truth. And we had a great day. Got a whole bunch of over 40s, bunch of 30s, a bunch of 20s, very healthy fish. Got them back all in the water very safely. We didn't play with them or anything. I think with the catch and release is really to do it efficiently, do it quickly. You want to get your photo. Don't drag and look for a camera. It's whoever's got it ready, go and do it. Put them back in the water and make sure they do swim away. Just don't turn around and go fish again. You got to make sure those fish are really swimming and getting out of the way, to be honest with you. But the trick really is to be not in a total crowd. That was the key for the whole day, and also what they wanted too. So,
yeah, Sam, I thought you did a great job that day, and you really talked about us as a team. But we all kept track of how many over 40 fish we caught. That's how many we caught.
right.
The total was it 41 or 40?
40. No, it was 41. 41 over 40. Yeah.
41. And Sam alone caught, am I correct? Is it 11?
No, 10.
10.
Yes.
10.
That doesn't make a difference because everybody got caught. Everybody did well. Everybody did, what they were supposed to do. It's not about who outfished who or anything like that. It's really to go out and have fun and make sure that these fish are there again when we come back. That's really the bottom line, really, and to make sure that they're healthy to be released and not bring them home. You know, how much rockfish do you have in your freezer right now? I mean, do you really need it that much? And how, catch and release is the way to go. And a lot of times for us, and that's what I do that usually like 90-95% of the time. I do keep fish, but not crazy.
Well, I was uploading video to the very last minute to have clips that Chuck and Pete share with me to kind of celebrate this amazing fishery we have going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I was slow to get the prize out, which will be at least a pack of OG eels from Old School Tackle Company. So question of the night, and Michael Cool's already asking a question now. Got some comments. What's going on, Rashawn, Andrew, and Rashawn again. But before we go any farther, I feel rude. Chuck has been sitting there very patiently. Chuck Jones, Salty Sirens. Chuck, tell us about Salty Sirens and kind of what you guys do.
Well, we're a light tackle charter, just like Pete, except we focus more so on the upper bay and middle bay. We will chase reds in the summertime down out of Solomon's. But I did want to say, fishing next to Sam last week, I watched you guys because we were on the fish just along with you guys, and we left because we saw gannets diving, ran over to the gannets, and there were no fish underneath the gannets. Couldn't believe it. And we just took a lesson from you guys to sit still and wait for the fish to drift under the boat. And the next charter we went out on, we did the same exact thing, and we just sat still, drift along the edges, drift from deep to shallow, and just kept the engine off for a good while, and we had a really good day.
Yeah, that was an amazing day. I mean, those gannets, we saw the exact same thing you did. It's diving and there was nothing, and then we pushed a little bit more shallow. The highlight of that day for me was catching a 47, I believe, in 10 feet of water.
Yep, that was crazy.
That was insane.
Yeah, that was crazy.
But we're on here. I really, like I've said a lot of times, I try not to get bogged down in the fight between catch and kill, catch and release, and the politics that are surrounding that. But I did feel like it was necessary tonight because I've heard a lot of talk about the potential of Maryland shutting down the catch and release based on all of this, all of the huge and beautiful fish that we're seeing caught. And a lot of people are really passionate about that. And as a catch and release angler myself, and I haven't always been a catch and release angler, I have since the rockfish situation has gotten pretty dire in the last few years. I haven't kept a single rockfish. But I really wanted to get all of us at the table to kind of chime in. And I, at this point, before the questions really get going, I'd like us all to kind of organically chime in on how, they feel about the catch and release fishery that we have here for these amazing rockfish and, where they stand on it.
I'll jump in real quick. Hey, I've been doing this catch and release thing since 1995, especially in cold water. Started out at Calvert Cliffs Nuclear Power Plant in 95. I learned how to fish that. I fished it for a few years, gained some great fishing friends. And then in in the year 2000, I got my guide license and continued to catch and release. And the cold water catch and release stuff is spectacular. And here's why, man. The science reveals that in cold water, with a single hook, we're not killing fish. I don't think we kill as many as they even think. Like 3%, 2%, whatever it is. I'm not sure what the percentage says. But in cold water, unless you gill hook them or drop them all over the boat and hit them with a hammer, they don't die. Also in the winter, something I've noticed through the years, I've had a live tank in there when I can't run my ice machine at home. I'll put fish in a live tank in the cold water, especially when it's below 60. The fish don't die in a live tank all day. You have to cut the water off at the end of the day unless you're going to fillet them flopping. It's amazing how strong they are in cold water. So the cold water catch and release, for as long as I've been doing it, has been spectacular. So this the attack on catch and release is just, there's horrible science thrown out there, and the numbers of fish that they declare we catch is insanely overblown in March and April, according to the MRIP numbers. So I won't carry on too much on that. You know, Dave has incredibly great technical knowledge that he can share with those numbers. And, you know, he's got great ideas on how for us to get the word out. Him and I had a chat a while back, and, you know, me spouting off, or Salty Sirens, you know, blowing off his siren, you know, and Sam, you know, just going out with a picket sign and screaming with a blowhorn, it's not going to work. So, you know, I wish the facts, what torques me is their own science they're not following. They declare in 2017 is the numbers they used to shut off April of our April catch and release. Just real quick, the numbers that MRIP declared, and Dave can tell us what MRIP is. MRIP declared in the year of 2017, March and April, that we caught 600,097 fish. And here's how they came to that number. And Dave again can tell me if I'm wrong. They checked, and I know this for a fact, they checked 107 boats. It's on the internet, you can read it. They checked 107 boats for the March-April phase. And in those 107 boats checked, they touched and sniffed and licked and measured 76 fish. And out of those 76 fish, they matriculated out 600,097 fish caught. That's 10,000 a day in March and April. Every day, no matter what the wind is blowing.
Right.
It's insane, Dave. Help me out, Dave. I hope you're there. But those numbers are false. And then the state declares we kill 9% of them when their own study declares 2% in cold water, or at
Pete,
least
how
under
many?
3%. And I don't think it's that. But anyway, okay.
Well,
Pete, how many floaters have you had this year
Well, I haven't had any
after
floaters.
releasing?
I know David.
No, we haven't had any floaters. We
No.
haven't hooked
Right.
one large fish deep in the
Nope.
gills. Sometimes
Mm-mm.
they're in the throat, but this hand of mine, and I've got a retrieval tool too, when it's not in the gill and it's just in the throat, or it's usually in the mouth, those fish aren't dying from that.
No.
Imagine the instinct those fish have to be able to travel from Timbuktu, Massachusetts, up into Chesapeake Bay and back around the seals and the sharks and the fishermen. Catching them and releasing them without mortally wounding them doesn't slow them down. I mean, it's insane for that to be thrown out there. Okay, there, I'm done now.
One of the things that Sam and I were talking about was the size of these fish's heads and mouths.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they do get hooked deeply, even if that happens, I've got huge hands and I can still easily put my hand down there, free the fish.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
But I know David Sorsky can't stay with us all night. So what I'm going to do really quick is show the clip that Walleye Pete sent me that really addresses a lot of what we're talking about. Then we're going to let Sorsky chime in, and then we'll kind of take as much time as he's willing to give us and then continue the conversation. But I think it's a good time to show what Pete sent me earlier. So here we go. Guys, if anybody wants to chime in during this, just unmute yourself, because as soon as I play the video, it's going to mute us all.
Another beautiful 45 plus inch fish. We're going to release him here in this cold water. And what happens is his tail will start to quiver. We're just easing him back and forth a little bit, no big movements. And when he decides to take off, you know, you'll feel it. And, you know, and when you think he wants to move away, just you can let him go. Yep. There he goes. There he goes. See, that's a beautiful thing. When they're not in an ice box and you catch them in cold water, it's a beautiful thing. Great job, man.
Thanks,
that is a huge fish, and it's released to swim another day.
So guys, those of you in the studio, everyone at home got the sound. We didn't get the sound because I think it causes crazy feedback. And for those of you that saw that, man, I mean, that's what we do here on the bay. I mean, you don't have guys, you know, chucking fish, you know, head over tail in the water. I mean, every boat and every angler I've been around is releasing fish like that. David, what say you? Well, first of all, those of you who don't know David, can you go ahead and tell us, Sorsky, kind of where you're coming from?
I'm coming from a plate of oysters I just roasted.
Oh my God.
So I am going to eat on camera periodically, but I'm coming to you live from my basement in Baltimore. I am the executive director of CCA Maryland, Coastal Conservation Association, Maryland. I've been in this role since February of 2017 and volunteered for the organization for more than a decade prior to that. And so I do a bunch of fisheries policy and management and advocacy work. That's my full-time job, more than full-time. And I also do a lot of habitat work, building reefs and trying to enhance fishing in the bay. So beyond my role at CCA, I'm also the chair of the Sport Fisheries Advisory Commission to Maryland DNR and the legislative proxy for the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. So I'm one of 3 Maryland representatives to the Striped Bass Management Board and the management board for many other species up and down the coast. So that's kind of an extra piece of my fisheries life. It is, of course, relevant to my job, but it's not part of my job explicitly to do that work at ASMFC or at the Sport Fish Commission. But I'm like all of you, grew up an obsessed angler. You know, there's a wall full of junk behind me. There's hunting stuff on that corner. I've always just loved the life outdoors. And so after an early career in real estate, working in a family business, I kind of took time to learn conservation and learn what CCA was doing and volunteer and help out as a member, just a rank and file member. And I gravitated towards the fisheries stuff. Got involved in a lot of fisheries education programs. There's a really good one called the Marine Resources Education Program. That's MREP, not MRIP. It's terrible that the 2 acronyms are so close to each other because MREP is a great thing and MRIP has trouble. And so ultimately I've had an opportunity to get really immersed in fisheries management and have an educational background in mechanical engineering. So, you know, I can understand kind of the things at work, the dynamic systems and some of the math and science behind it, at least enough to hopefully try and convey it to our members and to the general public. A lot of folks don't realize that CCA is really just an organization of the general public. Anyone's welcome to participate and join.
So,
of course, yeah.
From a fisheries management perspective, you know, you sort of wear that hat in 2 separate organizations. What do you see going on right now? And from your perspective, from the side of the table that you sit on, you know, how does this rest?
Well, first, let me say that I recognize the common thing that we all do is define each other in these little micro groups. But after all the experience I've had over the years and all the great people from all these little groups I've met, I just continue to gravitate towards the highest level possible to define us. And that's we're the general public and we're recreational anglers. I tell people all the time, and it's absolutely true, that I'm a rec angler. I'm a private rec angler. I'm a shore angler. I'm a pier angler. I'm the customer of guides. I'm the customer of bigger charter boats. I fish inshore. I fish offshore. I buy seafood from the market. And I think lots of people, especially in this region, because the connection to our bay and seafood and access to it is so cultural within Maryland, there's so many Marylanders just like me that are exactly that way. I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of time to spend outdoors, kind of by choice, starting a family kind of late. I have some little ones upstairs and kind of immerse myself in that stuff. So I've had this interesting perspective to kind of be a long-term participant in participating outdoors, but also in the management realm. And, you know, what's technically happening, what is absolutely happening with the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, you know, that's the coast-wide management body. They're trying to lower fishing mortality. I'm part of that group that gets to make the decision on how that happens. And we'll meet later this month. I think January 24th is the meeting down in Crystal City. And so we'll be trying to finalize Addendum 2, the public comment period for which just ended. And so kind of on the CCA side of things, on our website, ccamd.org, there's a section that's called An Angler's Guide to Addendum 2. And while the public comment period for that's closed, it speaks to what we're trying to do to potentially reduce fishing mortality next year by 14.5%. It's a document that kind of falls short of doing that in entirety. And I've talked about it at length on some other different programs. I'll answer questions about it if necessary, but you know, I'm not here to talk all the technical details. The reality is that poor recruitment has been observed in the Chesapeake Bay. That is something that people debate. And that's part of the arena that we're operating in. Like everybody has the opportunity to come to the table and present their information. So there's debate about the young of year, but the system, which is the regulatory system, will be managing based on this prevailing data right now as it's compiled into what's called a stock assessment. Stock assessments typically trigger management action. That's the right way to do things. But recently the commission enacted emergency action that everybody's probably heard about to give us the slot that we have 19 to 31 and the coast 28 to 31. So all the pieces of the puzzle that make up striped bass fishing mortality, which are recreational catch, commercial catch, part of that's recreational discards, or like Pete was talking number wise, you take those big numbers like 600,000. That's a number that has very low confidence or very high confidence intervals, or wide range of potential reality behind it. And we did some stuff I can share with you all at another time on our website. Back during that period, they took away April. That really lays out some of the complexity and pieces of this system, MRIP. So overall, if I had to simplify it, I'd say like the signals that we have in management are telling us that recruitment is down. To me, that makes sense because of water quality conditions, warm and dry winters, also actual water quality conditions like sewage and various things that may cause algae blooms and hypoxia, lack of oxygen, dead bottom. All these mean that the estuary, this beautiful nursery, can't support renewed life each year the way we'd like it to for striped bass. It's just not working. Blue catfish are a huge part of that. They're a predator. I think there's a whole lot of details on that piece, but that's impacting the availability of young striped bass to grow the population, which is setting off all the bells and whistles and management's taking place.
So we're now looking at really 2 years in a row. I guess it's kind of what we just started this year, but last year right around February, and now this year it started in December. Absolutely exceptional fisheries for very large fish. And I'd like to kind of go around and get people's theories on what these fish are, because I've heard people say, they're coming in through the Delaware Bay from the canal, they're coming up through the ocean. So we all have our own theories. Sam, what is your thought, and what have you noticed as the difference between that rush that we got in February and March, and then what we have going on now?
I think it's obviously the bait for me. The bait is just staying in the bay, and when we see them swimming underneath the boat, we have Manhattan that's like anywhere from 4 inches to 12 inches, even bigger. It's the bait. Then they're going to follow the bait. And I think the temperatures made the bait more, agreeable to stay in the bay longer. And that's why they're here longer. Pete and I had discussions about it. Was this happening all the time and nobody saw it? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the last 2 years were kind of exceptional. And I think a lot of the people that fish it I think it's mostly the bait that draw them in and keeping them in. And they're eating. Boy, they're like footballs, more than footballs, like basketball. Yeah. But I did want to ask David one question. Is you represent basically the rec guys? Is that who you represent as far as the CCA, or is it a combination of everybody?
So the rec guys, as I said earlier, is better define it sort of as the general public, because anyone technically can go recreational fishing. So we on one level, we represent those that choose to become a member of CCA. But our focus is to ensure the health and conservation of the resource, as well as anglers' access to them. And in some circles, we get criticized for that and called an angler access organization, not a conservation organization. But in my world and in my mind, they're hand in hand. And the recreational fishery in the management lens is how I view it the same way that coastwide management views it. And that is that people can participate in the recreational fishery from shore, from a pier, from a private boat, private dock, on a charter boat, on a guide boat, on a for-hire vessel, right? That's all recreational fishing. Anybody that goes out with the intent of selling the fish with a license to do so and commercial gear is a commercial fisherman. And I don't like any further division than that, because it's happening in our fisheries. It's happening in striped bass. Of course, 2 fish, 1 fish is a very real thing in Maryland that's shown that division. But everybody's talking about that as if they want the easy way out of these reductions that are looming. Commercial folks are saying, "Oh, it's all the recreational guys' fault. It's the catch and release fault."
Right.
The data doesn't support that. So anyway, I give long answers. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Chuck, I wanted to kind of switch the conversation and ask you. We've had Pete on quite a bit, and he's shared a lot on how he feels about catch and release. But what have you seen for your business over these last 2 years with this kind of I guess renaissance of these very big rockfish during the colder months?
Well, I mean, right now is just absolutely incredible. I mean, from what I've been hearing is that we haven't had a bite like this in 15 years. I can't really speak to that because I haven't really been out here that long. But I mean, I'm just thanking my lucky stars that we have what we have going on right now. I mean, it's a once in a lifetime bite going on right now. It's absolutely incredible to be able to go out and catch 40 fish over 40 rather than have to slug around down by the power plant and pick off one or two or fish overnight to catch one of these monsters. I mean, they're everywhere. It's awesome. I don't know.
Sam, you brought up that your conversation with Pete on whether you thought they were always there or not. Interestingly enough, I talked to LJ. We all know Lonnie Johnson the guy that does GI jigs.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy, great fisherman, great captain. But I went to pick up some jigs at his house a few years ago, and I was like, man, I hope I bet you're getting ready to go fishing. You can't wait to go fishing in March and April. And he's like, what are you talking about, man? I can't do a good man. But he's like, I'm go catching them right now. Like, this is in the dead of winter. And I'm like, well, where are you going? He's like, right out front, dude.
I heard some LJ in there. You did a good impression.
You did a good one. That was a good one.
It was close enough.
And like he was saying that he goes out in his boat basically to the channel edge, right out in Chesapeake, right out in front of Chesapeake Beach. Although LJ's definition of right out front is a little loose. I mean,
yes.
But what do you guys say about that? That question's kind of for anybody. Is it something that's been here forever? Is this a newer phenomenon? Is it technology that's allowing people to find them? Phones?
All of the.
I live next door to the power plant, so I fish the plant a lot in the winter historically. But historically, also, I've actually had gannets busting. For years in a row, you would catch them out. You could see them with binoculars out from the plant and go get them, but nobody was really rolling up and down the bay looking for that bite. And then what LJ does, he gets out there and drifts along, and it can take some time to catch those fish. That's not something as a guide that I'm probably going to do with great confidence. So I didn't ever do that too much, but I would definitely go chase the gannets working. And then right now, what Chuck said or what Sam said, I think these fish came out of the ocean and swung a right into the bay. And the Rappahannock River had a bunch of reports going on before we got them at Point Lookout region and up to Solomon. So I believe they came from the south to the north. And the numbers are really cool. I mean, it's a good, cool, beautiful thing to see. But they're not the bay fish. Our bay fish, I've seen a huge decline in bay fish where I fish at in the months of, in the spring, it's still pretty good, but then the fish move north. And then in the fall, when I usually had a bunch of fish, I did not. I don't know where they were. They didn't show up in October very well. I had to work hard to catch any. But anyway, what LJ does out there is pretty cool. And I'd love to get on his boat and just go let him do it and let me watch and not worry about catching fish for clients.
I'm sure that would be fun for you. I've always wanted, Pete, on like a nice calm day, just to take you out in my whaler and let you not be the captain, or even better yet, see if you were capable of not being the captain. See if you could actually just sit there.
I would love to just sit there.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say.
And Dave, hey, Dave, I really appreciate what you've done for all these years. And Dave, I've had you on my boat, and you're a lanky. You're one of those lankies, uncoordinated. So, yeah, Dave's about 6'20" and uncoordinated, and usually I had to hook fish for him, but he's all right.
I try.
Yeah,
I will say
he's
that
great.
these big fish and this kind of these last 2 years and what's going on right now intrigues me, and it's part of what sucked me into fisheries management. I've had a benefit of being able to run around and chase some of the pretty interesting bites through like the early 2000s. Stuff down at the bridge tunnel, like not drifting eels, fly fishing for fish on a light line, throwing light tackle jigs at them down there, participating in the power plant fisheries as it ebbs and flows, doing some early season catch and release when most people are not fishing. I'm a lifelong duck hunter, so I've never winterized a boat, and never believed in that. So I've had a lot of fun out in the wintertime. And what I've learned in management is we overcomplicate some of this stuff. These fish have a temperature that works for them. There's food, and they're going to get those things based on their location or their depth, food and temperature. And there's lots of spots in the bay that work for them. And so it's kind of dumb luck what happens. And there's these greater patterns at play that we're never going to understand. And we kind of observe. What's interesting to me is the cyclical nature, and then also the repeatability of a pattern, which every good fisherman and every good guide knows on a kind of a micro level during a certain summertime pattern or whatever. And to me, this is just a pattern that makes total sense. I don't expect it to happen every year. It's not nature's not like that. We're going to have a couple of years of this. It's going to ebb and flow. And I've actually gotten to experience that before. I'd say I was talking to somebody today about the classes of fish and kind of where they came from, or the same question. A lot of people are talking about this. And I recalled some days when in April, this was Eastern Bay in let's say 06, 07, catching, I was telling him, I think my personal best fish on the fly is like a 44 incher. It's either 42 or 44. I caught it in Eastern Bay, totally random in April. And ultimately, I was talking to this one friend today about, these fish are pulsing into the bay. They're going to be hanging up on an edge. The gill net fishery in Maryland is targeting these fish hung up on an edge. That's what it's been doing forever, whether it's false channel or brick house or off of Poplar, off of Tillman. These spots are just habitual spots that these fish have been for decades. They're not available to the rec angler all the time because if you have temperature too low, the fish is not going to be actively pursuing the kind of gear that light tackle anglers are using. And you're not going to get out there on that day. So we have this combination of weather, of technology, the ability to communicate with each other, side scan, better gear than ever before. But these fish being here is nothing new. It's like a balloon, essentially, the population. If you squeeze it, they're going to pop out somewhere. And I think this cycle is going to be with us for a little bit, and we should take advantage of it and 1,000% focus on the best practices of releasing, because there shouldn't be an argument about letting people fish at this time of year. This should be a time of year when businesses don't slow down. There's tackle shops that are closing because of the April and extended May closure right now, and that's just disgusting. That's not fisheries management. That's failure. Yeah. So we need to kind of adjust the way we're talking about it, and I think that just takes strong leadership across the board in every kind of group to respect each other too.
I asked Chuck about how it's affected his business, because I think that's a huge thing. Let's be honest. It sounds terrible, but we can all come together when it comes to making money, right? Everyone wants
absolutely
a buck, and this catch and release fishery is great for a lot of things, for tackle companies, right? For tackle shops, for charter captains, right? For gas companies, people buying gas. But Jason brought up a really good point that I wanted to start asking Chuck about. But he said, I've been fishing the Upper Bay area for 30 plus years, and I don't really see any floaters in the cold water months, more so towards Chuck, during this time period, have you seen any floaters?
No, not at all. And I wanted to ask Dave, what's the percentage that is derived for our, so when we check in our fish at the end of our trips on the guide program, what's the percentage of fish that we catch and release that they say it automatically dies? Is 9%. It like 40%? What is it? 9%? Yeah. I think that's even overrated.
Right now it's gotta be, because
right now it absolutely is. It's like 0%.
This
is one of these things that there's a lot of good graphs out there. I get lost here. There's a lot of good graphs out there on this stuff. Alan Batista posted something today that really shows it really well across a couple different studies. Just like everything, there's a sliding scale, and it depends on multiple parts of the equation: temperature, hook location, salinity, and the size of fish. There's not a lot of science necessarily on size of fish, but we do know that the bigger fish are more susceptible to hypoxia because they're like us. You know, if all 5 of us took a dead sprint down the street, we're going to keel over. That's the way these big fish are, and that's why you have to show them a little extra care. It's why they're also more sensitive to the hotter water. So it's going to be a sliding scale from about 0.8% up to 40, 50%, depending on the gear. It definitely is heavy towards bait, causing deep hooking because the hook location leads to mortality more so than the temperature and the salinity stuff. That's extra stressors. Temperature means less oxygen to breathe. Salinity, it can impact some physiological stuff, which stresses the fish and uses energy without, almost in the subconscious, in a certain way. And so there's these mitigating factors in each situation. And when I say we should be embracing this catch and release period right now, recognizing that fishing does kill fish, it always will. That's just reality. Do we want a 90-something% survival rate, 95, 97, 98, depending on conditions and outcome? Right? Like if somebody's deep hooking fish all day long, they're killing more fish than science believes they are, and that's not acceptable. So anyway, if we can accurately measure, we should be able to regulate too in that same lens, and take this wintertime period and say, okay, these fish are accessible to some people, not everybody, but it drives some great economy, and it's a very efficient way to utilize an animal that could be caught, 30, 40 times before it may die and derive economic income all along. Because let's not kid ourselves. There's no like high ground here morally. Fishing is an economic activity. I hate the one side versus the other nonsense, and I think actually we fail ourselves by falling into that kind of that situation. Because in the end, we all want more fish. Nobody's innocent in this. Whether yes, subjectively we can pick and choose winners all day long, but in reality, the science just looks at it as dead fish, and allocation is that political side of the coin. And to floaters, I saw that question. There is like a scientific component to floaters that we have to be considerate of here. You may not see cold weather floaters. That's just not how it works. It's partly the decomposition process that happens in the summertime, which leads to the bloating and then the popping up onto the surface. It's actually what happens to the fish the moment it dies. When you're in the hot weather, anybody that's killed one by accident, if they let go, we'll see it pop back up. Wintertime, it's not so likely that it's going to happen, but it's also some of these studies have done a controlled environment to better understand that. And then tagging is one of those things, like tagging for migratory and mortality estimates, like scientific tagging, not tagging your fish because you killed it. That stuff also tells management a lot. If tag return percentages are relatively consistent amongst different studies, then managers can assume that the actual act of tagging is not biasing the mortality impacts on those fish. And so they've done tagging long enough. They're actually doing migratory studies throughout this winter, Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as state agencies. They do the belly tags. And that's the stuff that just intrigues the living heck out of me. And it'll teach you that, again, these fish are going to exist where the conditions allow them to exist. Any good angler knows that. Yeah. They're also going to move all over the place and blow our minds, but there is some kind of repeatability of their patterns. And so there's a lot of really important stuff that happens in the fisheries lens. If you can escape yourself from the politics, you may make yourself a better fisherman.
That's good stuff. Speaking of making people better fishermen, guys, we're going to go into audience questions now. If you want to get a question in, let's go ahead and do it now. And also, if you ask a question, you're eligible for a prize of the night. What we'll do is, if Sikorsky's still here at the end of the show, he can pick a question of the night. Pete, you can pick a question of the night. Chuck, you'll pick a question of the night. Tiebreaker is going to be Sam. Sam's going to choose of the three which of those was the best question, and that will be the winner. So get your questions in now. I've got a few other questions that I can ask, as they kind of file in. But Michael Cool, who's the captain on the bay, asked, what direction are these big fish headed for? Oh, let me go ahead and also preface this by, we'll probably have a lot of questions, and we've got about 20 minutes left. So let's try to kind of somewhat hyphenate answers. If we can keep them answers to about a minute, that would be great. What direction are these big fish headed for? and why?
Well,
So
hey,
they're
I'll throw in there. Michael, I don't know. But last year, they showed up in Maryland waters in January, and by late March, they were off Bloody Point, and they weren't they were way up north in the water. That was last year. This year, we just seem to have fish up there, down here, and in the middle. We seem to have more of them this year. It's crazy. But what way are they going? I'm not sure. Ski, you got any answers for that?
Yeah, they're heading towards the spawning rivers, and that's actually
Yeah.
exactly why DNR has them closed.
Yeah.
The various maps are available on their website. I can't remember exactly what they are right
Yeah.
now, but there's closures to protect these fish as they get ready to spawn. So the short answer is they're staging to spawn, but chasing bait in the meantime, and they can do that
there
all
you
over the
go.
darn bay.
And then,
Yep.
but we haven't had that happen every year like that. And at least where we got this,
Right.
where the birds led the way and the fish were just available. So I don't know.
Yep. But again, the commercial fisheries in Virginia with anchored gill nets and in Maryland with drift gill nets have targeted these fish classically for many, many years, and they're catching hundreds of thousands of pounds of them. So
yeah, wonderful.
They're there.
Yeah.
They're there.
So Sikorsky, and I want to get on to the next question. You're saying these are pre-spawn fish moving up from the ocean?
Yes, but that's a whole philosophical thing that I could get into, because what is pre-spawn? I might be pre-spawn if I have another child. But yes, if we're thinking like females that are getting ready to head up and do it, it's going to be a photoperiod impact that triggers spawn. It is a temperature thing. It's a moon thing. There's tons of great biologists. I mean, Jim Uphoff's one of the best. I love listening to him. We did a thing with Fish Talk, the Chesapeake perspective. He's on the past version of that. Check that out. That's some really cool fish nerd stuff on how this all kind of happens.
All right. So Sam and Chuck, I'm going to let you guys both chime in on this for 30 seconds each. What are your preferred colors? And do you think all the boat traffic has changed the pattern? So I guess it's a two-part question.
Well, I can jump in on there. I mean, I start out with chartreuse, and I'll run both of them. I have 10 rods set up. I'll go 5 and 5. And as far as boat traffic, definitely affects these fish big time. I mean, the moment we were on fish drifting and we were catching them, and then the moment another boat would show up, the bite would just stop. And then that boat would take off, and we'd just sit there for another 5 minutes, and then the bite would start back up. So running and gunning isn't working right now.
Yeah. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, the boat traffic, definitely have to agree with Chuck on that. On the color, it depends on the day. There's sometimes the light is really bright and they love that chartreuse. Sometimes that the disco Cisco works real good, the pearl white, but you can't get hung up on color. I've seen people constantly trying to change every time they catch a fish. If the stuff that you're using works, then just use it.
Yeah.
Keep trying to change, because you're wasting also a lot of time trying to change things out when you don't necessarily have to. So yeah, chartreuse is is good. White is good. The pearl whites are really good. So sometimes the dark colors work. So you really have to know, and then look what the bait is. Look in the water. I mean, what do those bait look like? And then put your bait next to it, and then see what it really looks like with that. Kind of like use your head. I stay away from any kind of trebles, because I think that hurts the fish even more. There's no reason really anyone should be using trebles right now. They should be using single hooks, something that's easy to come in and out. Like Pete said, you could put your finger in there, get it out quick as you can. So I think that's part of it too with that.
Yeah, I'll say when we were out together, Sam, that in terms of the boat traffic, the reason why we had such a good day is because you and others spent a lot of time on the binoculars. Tom Weaver made a comment on this show last month that the most important tool he had was a cell phone. And that's totally true. But right now, I think the binoculars are maybe the most valuable tool you can have on your boat, because the key for us that day was finding our own birds, being the first there.
Right.
And, like, there shouldn't be a fleet in sight. For your best chances, you want to be there pretty much before anyone else. You want to creep in on your own birds, and then three or four more boats are going to come, inevitably, and then you got to find your own again. But the boat traffic is a killer, and I would urge everyone that's watching to try to be patient and forgiving when people are coming in, on your fish in your water. It's obnoxious. We've got young boaters, inexperienced boaters, and you're probably not going to solve anything and educate them that day on the water. So I think we would all be.
We learned that.
What's that?
Yeah,
Can
we
I
learned
throw
that.
something in there on the crowd on how you can maybe catch fish when
Please
when
do.
you can't avoid traffic? Can I tell you what I do? It's not complicated, but if Sam and Salty Siren and Sikorsky was in his duck boat and they were racing to the fish, I would let them beat me to the fish, and I'm going to envision. I'm going to know. Okay, what's the tide doing? Is it moving in or is it moving out? I'm going to move up current of where those birds are because the fish are pushing bait into the current. So I'm going to get upstream. I'm going to drift through there. The guys that went right to the birds right away, they're going to drift away from those fish quickly, and the fish are going to move towards me. So you don't need to being the first one there is great. If there's nobody there, that's incredibly wonderful. But on a busy day out there, think, do it strategically and, get upwind, up current of where you think those fish are going to be pushing and do that. So anyway, that's what I do a lot of, and I have great success with that.
Well, the other thing I want to add to it is how important guides are on the bay, because to the rec angler, they teach you a hell of a lot of stuff. If you think you're going to go and buy a $60, $70, $80, $100,000 boat or $300,000 boat and think you're going to kill it, you're not. Even if you have the best electronics in the world, you learn things from Pete. From Chuck, there's tons of other guys, Greg, Dre, I could keep naming them, Dave, and there's a lot, Brian, there's a lot of people that are out there that do, and that's how you learn. I've learned all from them. I go, every time I learn, I get yelled by Pete. I love it because he tells me that I'm doing something stupid. You know what I'm saying?
I coach.
I'm glad it's not
just
me.
My
No,
wife
you coach,
is watching
it's
this, and my
It's
mother.
true.
They're
It's
going to think I yelled at you. I coached you.
You did, and you did
No,
it
you
well.
don't.
You did,
You
and I
don't.
appreciate every coach that I got from you.
And
But I'm just saying,
Sikorsky, I will beat you up, but that's all right.
You can
how
save
important-
years of
how important it is
frustration
to
by
go
going out
these
with a
guys
guide.
because they know what
Guys,
they're doing.
I want to make sure we get to everyone's
Chuck, unless you
question.
fish with Pete, he just makes you frustrated.
Yeah. You guys are providing great information,
you.
but I do want to make sure we get to everyone's question. Barb Gibbs said, is the bluefish you mentioned native or a rider on a ship moving across waterways?
Let me answer that, and let me explain something.
Yeah.
Barb is my aunt, and she lives in Syracuse, New York. And she
Hey,
used to
Barb.
take me trout fishing when I was a little kid and couldn't go by myself. I was like 4. So she would take me down to the creek at Grandma's house and take me fishing. Barb would. So that would be my aunt right there. Is the bluefish you mentioned? No, it's not a rider. It's a migratory fish that goes out in the ocean in the winter and it goes south or offshore. And then in the spring, in the spring, they start to show up in Chesapeake Bay. And then by June, July, they start to show up in pretty good numbers in our water. But yeah, that's my aunt.
When your aunt
Telling her
took you
about-
fishing, you were 4.
She said
And
she
she
said
held the
bluefish,
rod
but
on. Did you
What's
yell
that?
at her and tell her she was handing you a loaded gun?
Yeah, that's right. We
She's
didn't have
asking
good
about-
equipment back then, but we caught some trout, though.
she's asking you about I think blue catfish because I mentioned them earlier.
Oh,
And she's like, yeah,
catfish.
I'm reading into this. Barb,
Yeah.
thank you for your patience in dealing with Pete. I'm not sure he's changed in too many ways since back then, but we love him. but B, blue catfish are an invasive that are native to North America. But they're just
Everyone.
what happened? There you go.
I got the shepherd's hook, and I'm just going to shut up.
Are we froze?
Oh, yeah, everyone froze for a second.
Oh.
The comments coming in are funny. John
Get the
said,
slack out of your line, Sam.
Yeah, I know.
Joey says, you yell at everyone.
Oh, who you? Not me.
Oh, that couldn't be you, Pete. No.
Hey, Chuck.
Yeah.
Salty Siren. They're all full of crapola.
You're right. They are.
I coach. And then hug.
Going on Salty Siren, Chuck, I'm going to guess you're the salty one and your wife is the siren. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when Salty Siren has nothing to do with a fire engine siren, guy.
No, nothing.
It's the beautiful women that lay by the water. The siren. Come on. All right. Let's see. Kenneth Murphy says, question for you, Dave. Can the general public listen in on the upcoming ASMFC meeting on striped bass? And if so, how do we do it?
Yes. So the ASMFC website is asmfc.org, and their calendar has the upcoming winter meeting on it. And what you'll do is click on the agenda. It will provide you day 1, day 2, day 3, and the same webinar link using go to meeting, so you can log in and follow along. Obviously, you can't make. I guess you can make public comments from the internet, and it's up to the chair whether or not you do that streaming. But people can also attend in person. It's at a hotel in Crystal City. That information's on the website as well. So
Nice.
come on, come all, and anybody can reach out to me in the meantime. And if they want to talk more about what Addendum 2 is, what's happening with that, that's my focus right now. I'm happy to talk to anybody offline.
And they can get in touch with you on Facebook through CCA.
Yeah, ccamd.org. The website has my contact information, email, text, phone call, Facebook message. I'll answer them as fast as I can, but I'm definitely buried right now after coming out of the holiday break.
Yeah. Ryan Obermeyer, I apologize if I got your name wrong. He says, assuming we get much colder weather, will the fish stay in the mid-bay even if the water temp drops 5 to 10 degrees, or will they head back south looking for warmer water? I'm going to direct traffic a little bit. And Chuck, why don't you answer that one? What do you think?
I was going to defer to Pete on that one because I'm curious to find out my own self.
Pass the ball to Pete. What do you think, Pete?
Well, historically, let's see, 5 degrees will put it down to a hair like around 40.
Yeah, I saw 46 the other day.
40 is still catchable, but historically, I get worried guiding when the water's that cold because, man, if you just might not ever find fish that day. Right now, 45 is great temperature, and then 10 degrees, 35. You know what? If it's happening at 35, I'll be happy. But I think the bait possibly leaves, and I believe maybe the big fish will follow them, and then they come up to spawn. But I don't know that. Dave declares the netters. I know the netters catch a lot of fish all winter long in the gill nets, but do they catch migratories?
Yeah,
all winter?
I mean, the Virginia fishery is targeting big fish. They have a mesh size restriction. That's relatively new, but they target big fish, the same kind that guys are catching jigging right now.
How's the regulations affect the gill netters about the emergency action? How's that work?
So the emergency action, which occurred to change 2023 regulations, did not impact commercial fishing. This addendum that's being finalized in January, unless something changes, but that's the plan. That will is considering up to a 14.5% quota reduction, and then it's up to the states to determine how they allocate that. A lot of states have, like Maryland and Virginia, both have what's called an individual transferable quota. Individuals have quota assigned to them, and it's kind of theirs to figure out what they do with it. They can sell it, they can lease it, and so you're kind of lessening the pie that commercial has, and everybody has a different size piece. So you're making the pie smaller, and then the regulations set on the rec side do the same thing. So, but here and now there is no the 28 to 31 and 19 to 31 did not impact commercial. So Virginia does not have a max size. Maryland's max size is 36. Virginia's targeting big fish. Again, they just have a net size reduction of, I think it's 7.5 inches is the gill net panel, but they anchor their nets. Everybody that's fished down the flats west of Tangier and Smith, or down off Smith Point into the shallow stuff to the east and all over Virginia's portion of the bay, you're going to find these nets. So they're out there, and that's a big concern I have as a manager, because we're targeting them truly pre-spawn. We're targeting with fatality, not with a 98% or 97% return rate. And so there's some challenges there, and I think that's what I'm interested in as a ASMFC member, is tackling some of these not loopholes, but these regulations that still exist, which are targeting big spawning fish, because these big spawning fish are going to die soon. It's just a reality of a 25-year-old striped bass. The year classes run out of population. And if we have poor recruitment coming, I hope we're wrong, but I don't think we are. It's going to be a really low spot for the fish we need in the bay to sustain our fisheries, both commercial and recreational, throughout the summertime. So I'm concerned, but it's exciting to be able to go out there and sustainably catch and release these fish right now. So I'm excited people are doing it.
Well, I want to make sure we get to everyone's question. Sam, David, Chuck, and Pete, are you guys okay if we go maybe a few minutes over an hour? We're at 55 minutes now. So if anybody needs to leave, feel free to, obviously we're not, you're not forced to stay here. Brian McCormick, good friend of the show, correspondent of the show, actually says there's been additional days added as do not target to the 2024 season already. Is this effective, let alone enforceable? I think we could be more effective with education and outreach. I guess that's probably a question for you, David, but before Sikorsky chimes in, does anyone else want to take a shot at that?
I think education would be a really good thing. I think education would be great. I just don't know if it's possible. As far as catch and release goes, I mean, there's a lot of folks that, the parties that, are against each other declare, catch and release kills a lot of fish. But if we were educated and learned how to catch and release better, if a law was made single hooks, barbless even, if not bring them in the boat, that kind of never reaching the gill plates. I mean, education could go a long way and to save a good number of fish if our state, wanted to do so and let the fishery maintain. So that's my take. What do you think?
Be made that, like, why are treble hooks allowed on any lure, right? I mean, me and my friend Robert Figliozzi spent an hour switching out treble hooks off of our plugs with single hooks, and it really doesn't take that long. And honestly, if more states made regulations like that, lure companies would probably start sending lures with single hooks on them. But go ahead, David. I'll stop talking and let you chime in on that.
Yeah. So the Addendum 6 rules, which is the rulemaking process which led us to 2020, 2 fish, 1 fish, April closure, little to no commercial reduction. That stuff has been something that is a little bit unprecedented, at least in recent time, and I think is the wrong way to manage a fishery. It was what I call an ad hoc reallocation implemented by Maryland DNR. Maryland DNR does not have a spelled out allocation process, and I think that's a problem. So we don't understand managers' vision or what they're really trying to achieve as much as we should, I think, as stakeholders. And I challenge them on this. And regardless of who the governor is and who's in charge, I think that's what the public deserves, is to understand what is the agency trying to accomplish, and not just in the big lofty kind of mission statement you can find on our website. So I've been working kind of on the inside to really try and find effective ways that the department can educate stakeholders. And I don't care who that stakeholder is. That's the work that I'm doing, wearing my CCA hat, because it's part of our focus to advise and educate people. So there's a lot of history there. And I can definitively say that the April closure was based on ridiculousness. It is not saving fish. The only thing you can hang your hat on there is that, if you handle a fish and really hurt it or kill it, it won't spawn. But there's no science on that either. And so I think to take away that economic opportunity in a time period where, for many anglers, is the opportunity to catch a fish of a lifetime, what they've chosen is what I consider the political science path, which is more, all right, who has access? Now let's take away from people equally. And I've heard that out of managers' mouths in Maryland DNR. I choose and prefer do what's best for the fish and kind of let the people do as they will, and then regulate based on that outcome. It's kind of a more free market type approach in my mind, for lack of a better way of describing it. Because, again, I believe that a captain should be able to pivot their business to participate in a catch and release fishery, and therefore those April days and those May days are really important. So, as I mentioned earlier, there's some tackle shops flirting with going out of business because this 6-week period during a ramp up phase that they built their business on is now being kind of just yanked out from under them. The 4 weeks taken under the previous administration during Addendum 6 was not based on science, fishery science. It was based on political science. There's no simple mechanism to reverse that stuff. It's just not that easy. And many at DNR don't think they need to, especially with the way that the population is. So I think taking away the non-targeting piece that that component of the trophy season closure, which is the here and now, which is almost final from my understanding. That more recent regulatory change makes sense to take away trophy season. We don't want to be killing big spawning fish if the population's lower and they're less successful than we want. But I do believe that we should allow access based on science, because again, all of the, it's almost 600 FGRs or charter boats should be able to go out there and derive some sort of business income, which continues to spread out across our sport fishing economy in our state. And we shouldn't have a 6-week hole in it, especially when prevailing science doesn't have it. So I think it's a big mistake that I don't see a solution to when you have so many different people fighting over misinformation like we have happening with catch and release. But maybe we'll get there one step at a time. People are going to have to give up a lot. That's just the nature of the beast. Nobody's guaranteed access to a fishery, and that's an unfortunate reality of all this stuff. So we really need these fish to turn it around and focus on the big picture, not so much who gets what piece of the pie. I'm not interested in that. I want equity for all.
Excellent. Guys, we are at an hour now. I'm going to leave it open for questions for another minute, maybe 2 minutes, and then I'm going to cut off questions. But we'll make sure we'll get to all of the questions that have been asked. But if you've got a question to ask, now's the time to get it in, because if I keep questions open for 10 more minutes, we'll probably be here for another hour, which I would love to do, but I can't ask that for all of these guys.
Hey.
Go ahead.
I have a follow up on David for a second, if he
Sure.
doesn't mind. Is he still there? Or is he gone?
Yeah, I'm here. I was just adjusting my camera.
No, you said basically it was a political decision that made these, not really a scientific decision. Did you ever consider, or do you have a lobbying firm that lobbies for the rec guys or lobbies for the scientific ways to do that? Because one of my neighbors is a big lobby guy, and I was just talking to him about that. I said, because everybody lobbies, for it. If it's a political thing, why not try to not convince them, but just show them the facts that they're not getting the story right?
Yeah. So CCA in Maryland in recent history has not retained any professional lobbyists. By the way that the ethics rules and lobbying rules are set in the state, I'm considered a grassroots lobbyist. And that's just because I have income derived by being involved in advising government. And so with DNR being the executive branch, some of what I do is technically lobbying, and some of what the public can do is lobbying in the more general sense. But like I said, we have not retained professional support in recent years. And so much of this is extremely complex and kind of outside of the normal legislative cycle. This isn't a legislative, fisheries aren't legislated. Yes, there is legislative activity related to our fisheries, but our executive branch is who manages our fisheries. And so, yes, there's absolutely groups that have professional folks, especially to work on little projects here and there. That is very common. We don't do it. And like I said a lot, or a couple times tonight, I focus on advising and educating, and ultimately kind of respecting that all 5 of us may have a different opinion on the proposed regulations that are coming up for 24. 19 to 26 inch, 19 to 23 inch. We have all these reasons. And I think that it's great that we have a chance to weigh in on it, but we shouldn't take that as an opportunity to argue over it. And so from a CCA perspective, I've tried to focus our work on really advise and educate so you guys are informed, and not say that CCA believes that this is the only solution, because there's lots of solutions.
Right.
There's lots of ways to turn the dials. So anyway.
Hey, Dave, I got a quick question, and I don't think it'll be that difficult, but it boggles my mind. In the Chesapeake Bay, as a recreational guy, a guide, it just seems to me that our state seems to, it doesn't favor catch and release. Okay, I get it. Okay, they think we kill them. But in the history of the planet, are you aware of any fishery that's been depleted or ruined by catch and release?
No.
How about commercial netting and stuff? Just commercial fishing? Lots of fisheries have been depleted. So that boggles my mind. It boggles my mind.
Yep. There's a quote I use in lots of presentations that I give when talking about these issues and talking about government relations in general. And that is, as a supplicant to government, you cannot afford to BS. They reserve that right for themselves. And we don't have to look very far or exist in bureaucracy very long to see that folks that have the authority and have the ability to make decisions are going to make them, and logic be damned sometimes, or the perspective of a stakeholder group be damned. And, we're our own worst enemy in that regard. And again, that's why I go back to this idea that we're not one group versus another, because if we're united, technically our leaders should listen to us. And so that's what I challenge people to do in this time of New Year's resolution.
Yeah, I hear you. I would love science to rule the roost. That's what I would like. I would adapt to anything science says.
That'd be nice.
Not politicians, right?
There's a very strong. There's a lot of politics and everything. There's politics in me being on this live stream right now. My wife's waiting for me to help put Jack to bed.
I hear you.
But when I speak to the politics and fisheries, I mean it's on the allocation level. It's like if you Google politics, I think one of the definitions relates to kind of giving out of public things, and that's the sense in which I mean. And it's not a dirty thing. It's just reality of life. When you have a resource, people are going to dole it out. It's happening around the globe and will happen for all of human existence. But ultimately, we should avoid this idea that we're managing for little tiny groups, and that's where special interest can reign supreme, and that's just unacceptable. And Pete, to your point about recreational fishing versus catch and release versus commercial fishing and depleting of resources, of course, a recreational fishery could wipe out something. We could wipe out a stream of rainbow trout. Like if you have access to too many people have access to a depleted resource, sure, we can kill it. But with recreational fishing, our gear and we're terribly inefficient. That's why, like Sam's been saying, and we all know that, you want to catch fish, you hire a Pete, you hire a Chuck, you hire the guides that were there yesterday and know where the fish are. Because that's the only way that a guy like me is going to be highly efficient in straight bass fishing or any kind of fishing. Y'all know how to catch them. That's why I hired you. Commercial fishing, there's that same incentive to have efficient gear, land fish as fast as possible, and make as much money as possible. The problem is we stuck rec fishing, which is often about drinking a beer, getting some fresh air. Heck, I went on a date with my wife fishing on Friday. It was awesome. All these incentives for recreational fishing are so different than incentives for commercial fishing. And therefore, the way that they're approached are so different. And where the management... I don't know. I'm talking. You guys are moving. I'm on my last point. Can you hear me? All right.
I can hear you.
The point is when you jam these two types of activities in one place, and then you have folks that are fisheries managers largely trained to manage maximum sustainable yield commercial type fisheries, you're going to have these situations. And so my focus is to try and encourage our state government to invest in more surveys, more data collection, more science, but also recognize that quite often it's best to kind of separate the academic question from the regulatory question. And maybe that's something we can consider in Maryland. Let DNR make the decisions, but let the scientists be the scientists, and let it all be transparent.
Excellent. We're going to kind of speed around these last few, so let's try to keep questions in about
shut up.
30 seconds or less. Justin asks, have any of you guys had any luck north of the Poplar? It seems like all the boat traffic is south of Poplar and further south. Pete, I know you don't fish this far north, so I'm going to leave this one for Chuck and Sam. Sam, why don't you take it first?
Yeah, we did. We had luck up there. Thomas Point was good at one point. The Bloody Point was good. It depends on the day and depends what's going on. So, we were on fish on Bloody Point the other day. They were all turned out to be small fish. So you have to, unfortunately, the bay, you have to travel and you have to know where you're looking for and not be afraid to move. That's one of Pete's big thing. Let's move. Because you can't just stick around one area and just hope that they're going to show up. They're not.
Yeah, Chuck,
I've been fishing out
that far north. Do you fish that far north?
Well, I do, but right now my boat's down at Breezy Point, so luckily I haven't had to go that far north yet. I've been able to go right out front and keep on trucking around in the area until I find them.
Yeah, last year Eastern Bay was very hot, so you don't know. It
depends on the other day coming back. Actually, we were on Robert Figliozzi's boat. I mean, the bird show covered 10 acres south of eBay at Camp Point. Right. It was absolutely insane. Make sure I don't forget anybody. Rashawn asked, are there any regulations going to be put on Omega? Rashawn, I can go ahead and say before I let one of these guys contribute, they already have regulations. It's just that they tend to exceed them every year, and that they get fined for going over. Does anybody want to quickly add to that?
That sounds about right.
They've exceeded the regulations or the cap one time in recent history, to be fair.
Okay.
But they are regulated. They're highly regulated. The argument still exists. Should an international company with most of the economic benefit leaving our country be allowed to take the base of the food chain in the Chesapeake Bay? And my answer is definitively no. It makes no sense. And the science we're using to set their quotas is not based on a Chesapeake scale. And that's why I say no. So we don't know that the removal of 51,000 metric tons is not impacting the Chesapeake, so we should not allow them to participate in the way they do. But there's no real mechanism to stop that. You know, Virginia has sovereignty to execute their fisheries the way they do. Yet there is ongoing litigation and lots of stuff happening that's going to change the question about menhaden over the next decade. So stand by and get involved. And menhaden are important.
All right, we're almost there, and we're going to get Jack put to sleep. Anybody want to give me a 10-second answer on what kind of impact does the population of cormorants have on rockfish?
Cormorants eat anything they can get their mouth on, so it might kill rockfish, but who knows? And I can't see anybody studying it directly in the Chesapeake in the near term, but maybe they will.
I think it affects more uneducated fishermen than rockfish, really. You see a bird show around Cormorant, people think there's a bunch of fish there, and there's really not. So
Yeah.
I think it's affecting the fishermen more.
And then the last question of the night, I think it's the last question. Okay, yeah, it is the last question. Michael Cool asked, are there any confirmation on fish in the rivers? He said he went up into Cox Creek this morning, but found nothing. Pete, that's probably a you question. Have you done any looking in the rivers recently?
No, I haven't been looking in the rivers. No, I've been out in the main stem of the bay where the fish are. Could they be in the rivers? Sure they could. There's perch in the rivers. I know friends catching perch in the Patuxent, but I haven't heard and I haven't looked for rockfish in the rivers. So no, I've been out in the bay doing that crazy stuff out there with the nice catch and release.
Chuck, have you been up in the rivers at all?
I've hit the mouth of the rivers and they've been productive, but I haven't had to go all the way up into the rivers.
Normally I wouldn't take this question, but Chris Walker asked, do colors matter for strippers? And all I can say is that they prefer glitter, cheetah print, any animal print's usually pretty hot.
And chartreuse.
So guys, we still have Sikorsky is still with us. Chuck, Pete, and Sikorsky, do you guys each have a question of the night that you thought would be worthy of winning the prize?
Yeah, I do. I have one.
What's that, Pete?
That's the one about the bluefish in ship tanks.
Which was really about catfish, right?
Yeah, she was asking about blue cats.
Are the blue cats you mentioned native or a rider on a ship moving across water?
That's my favorite question.
There might be a little bit of a family bias on that one, but we'll allow it. What about you, Chuck?
I'm going to go with the temperature question.
I think I saw it. Let me see if I can find that one.
That's a good question too.
It was later in the show, right? Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Ryan. So we got Barb and we got Ryan so far.
That's a good question. Yeah.
And David, you're still there. What do you think?
I think Barb. And we were talking about blue cats.
You don't get to.
Yeah.
You have to pick your own.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, I picked my own.
Oh.
Darn it. Sean with the menhaden question. You always got to talk about that with straight bass because
The
they're
menhaden
intrinsically
question?
linked. Yep.
So that would be
Rashawn, I think.
Oh, the Omega question. Yeah. Okay, so we got Rashawn. There we go. Any regulations going to be put
Hey,
on?
Sam.
Yes.
You look nice tonight, Sam.
Oh, thank you.
Wow. All right. That's a little compliment. Maybe he's trying to bribe you to pick his family.
I know.
I don't know.
You don't know. You don't think I know Pete by now?
Yeah. He's always got an ulterior motive.
Of course.
I can see myself in your forehead.
I know. See here. Can you see?
Yeah. So, Sam, the reason why you're having to pick the question is because Pete's on here every week, so we don't want to get people mad at him. Sikorsky's likely to pop in here and there, and so is Chuck. So, like, you know, you're the guy that everyone can be mad at and, like, you know, exit stage left, and then, you know, people won't come after you.
Right. I'm going to have to go with the temperature question, Ryan.
Oh,
So it was.
I mean, I don't think your aunt could use those eels anyway.
she would have sent them to me.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, I lost it. Who asked? It was Ryan, right?
I knew
Ryan,
it.
yes.
He had a scheme.
Ryan Obermeyer,
Yes.
reach out to me. And guys, I'm running this operation solo, so I am definitely behind in mailing out prizes. So if I've forgotten, please just drop me a note and say, you know, where's my prize? Because I have them all. I have every intention of mailing them, but running this thing by myself, I get a little behind at times. So, Ryan, you have the prize. Go ahead and reach out to me on Facebook. Send me your mailing address, and we'll get those OG eels from Old School Tackle sent out to you as soon as possible. Gentlemen, it's been a great time. We've made it an hour and 15 minutes, and I think we've been pretty informative. Anybody want to close us out with any final words?
I just highly recommend
catch some fish.
I highly recommend people stuffing an oyster with a little bit of spinach sauteed in garlic and butter, and then adding some chopped up bacon that you cooked up too, and putting some Parmesan cheese and baking them at 375. They were fantastic. Kinda. There's no breadcrumbs. There's no melted butter.
Where are they? What part of Maryland are the oysters from?
They were from I think Fishing Bay.
Oh.
I'm a on the half shell raw guy. You know,
Yeah.
A little bit of horseradish, a little bit of lemon, perfect.
Right on.
Yeah.
I just want to say, consider strongly going out with the guide once or twice or 4 times a year. Learn some stuff. There's a lot of great guys out here. Pete, Chuck, other memorable guys. You'll learn a hell of a lot more. You get educated. You'll know what to look for. You'll do the right thing, and they're worth every penny that you give them plus their tip.
Yeah,
It'll save you years of frustration.
Yes, true.
We are definitely blessed with a lot of fantastic charter captains.
Yes, we do.
On the bay. I don't want to get into naming them because there's so many great ones, and I don't want to leave anyone out.
Yep.
And we all burn a lot of gas.
Yes, we do.
I don't know if any of them burn as much as you do, Pete. But
I burn a lot of gas.
You burn a lot of gas. Sure. Gentlemen, thank you so much, everyone of you guys that took your time tonight to participate. Everyone at home, thank you so much for the great questions. We had a really active audience tonight, so I appreciate that. And I felt like I took part in something that was really informative. So thank you much for that. We will be back next week. I think the show is going to switch to Tuesday, and next week is the freshwater report with Cambo Trout, Eddie Weber, and Rashawn Hunt that was chatting a lot with us tonight will be on there with some of the frogs that he's made. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great night.
Good night.
See you all soon.
Bye.
Good night.
See you.